Did the Phoenix Suns remind the world just how dangerous they truly are, or was Christmas just a miracle? It's another edition of Southwest Bias. Of course.
Get that stuff out of here! It's Southwest Bias!
Of course, brought to you by our friends over at Branded Bills. I'm rocking my Branded Bills right now. You can elevate your brand with Branded Bills. Oh, let's see. Let's do the Espo check.
I'm just wearing it too.
Are you kidding me?
I'm the biggest shill in the company.
I think we're competing.
You know, I'm wearing that. I've got Branded Bills underwear on. Their socks. They don't make any of that stuff. But if they did, I'd be wearing it. So.
I mean, it is comfortable. It's great performance, great headwear as well. Make sure you get 20% off your first order by using code PHNX over at brandedbills.com. Espo, we were sitting in these chairs about 12 hours ago, basically, a little bit more than that, 13, discussing this team really putting together a cohesive effort on both sides of the floor against a team that just ran them off the court a few nights earlier. Now you've had some time to sleep on it. We're going to unpack it a little bit more and say, is this for real? I think the first answer is you can't tell right now, but for me, it is a step in the right direction.
Well, yeah, of course it's a step, and you got to build from somewhere. And I think, well, I don't think that they reminded the NBA how dangerous they are. I think they reminded themselves that if they play as a team, if they play hard on both ends, they can likely beat anybody on any given night. Now, can you build that into your identity? Can you do that on a regular basis? Those are questions that they're going to have to answer over the next few months because, look, January's schedule is weak compared to what they've played. So, I hope that they build on it and they go on a win streak in January. I'm going to have to see it in February and March, too, against the tough competition as things get tighter for the playoffs to fully buy in, because no longer am I looking at this week to week or month to month. I'm looking at this in, okay, are you better than the totality of last year? And we won't know that until you get into April and May, if you're lucky enough to get there.
Yeah, and we talked about this on last night's post-game show, and I encourage anybody who missed that, maybe just Christmas activities, totally don't blame you, late at night. Go ahead and check that out, because I thought you and I had a really good balance of, like, I was obviously very excited for the win. I'm a very in-the-moment type of person, and that's how for me, I have to approach this season, where game to game, it's the most important thing in the world, but then you just take a step back and you go, what does this really mean when you peel back the layers? And I think if you peel back the layers of this game, the most important thing was, yes, on the court, but also afterwards in the post-game press conferences, what was said. Mike Budenholzer talking about how crazy it is that when you play connected and you try on defense, the ball just kind of seems to also go into the hoop. Bradley Beal talking about how they were pressing before. And one of the best attributes in life, not just sports, is self-awareness, right? And if a team like this, with all this talent, facing the problems that we've seen over their stretch, especially without Devin Booker, doesn't have that self-awareness, then nothing changes, right? And the only thing stopping this team right now from being good, maybe not great, but really consistently good, is themselves, is that defensive effort and consistency. And you can make some changes, put Ryan Dunn in the rotation, start him when Devin Booker is out, get Oso Ighodaro some minutes, tap into Josh Okogie and Monte Morris, and those two had fantastic games last night. But at the end of the day, it's purely effort from everybody. And if this team can prove that Christmas wasn't just bright lights in front of ESPN and, it's Christmas night, everybody's watching you, and you come out with effort. If you can continue to sustain that and, like you said, take advantage of a weaker schedule, I do think that the overall perception of this team changes. They still probably have to make some tweaks to be a perfect roster, but those tweaks don't matter if at your core, you're not approaching the game the right way, and last night they did.
Well, look, Friday is a good barometer because you're going to be playing a Mavs team that isn't going to have Luka, right? So that changes the dynamic. It's easy to overlook or expect, hey, now we can take advantage of this team that's missing their best player. Those are the kind of things that when you fall into those traps, it proves that you aren't locked in, and they need to be locked in night out to actually pull off what they're hoping to, and to prove that Christmas wasn't a fluke. And look, the cavalry isn't coming.
Yeah.
There's not as much as we all want, and I was pounding this table to, blow it up, something major. You got to shake it up. I don't think that's happening. I mean, as of today, Thursday, you saw Pat Riley come out and the Heat say point blank, we're not trading Jimmy Butler, and he said, and I usually don't do this, but the distractions are becoming too much, right? Now that could all be posturing, and who knows, but you can't expect or be waiting for that. Maybe you get a deal on the margins to get you some center help, but eventually you're either going to galvanize the way that they did on Christmas night, or you're going to fracture the way that they had when times got rough earlier in the season and at times last season. And I want to believe that was the point where they start to galvanize. But again, I don't know if it's because I've done this for so long now and I've done post games for so long now, but I am past the, in the moment overreaction, and maybe I'll get back there, and not even overreaction, just the reaction to a win. And I'm in a very much show me, prove to me, right? And I'll give you praise in the moments that you play well, and I'm going to question when it isn't. And I think that's where I'm at. I joked, are we in basketball purgatory a handful of days ago with what you and Gerald were saying, but I actually, for me, I am very much I'm in basketball's waiting room, and you're going to show me that it's worth me getting excited again and giving you that.
And I think you represent so many Phoenix Suns fans out there who feel the same way, because it's like you're in a bad relationship, right? And you keep going back to this person saying, I'm hoping that you show me better. I believe that deep down inside of you, there's something better than what's going on, because I've seen it, right? Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen it consistently. And it's tough when you've been hurt so many times. And I'm in a similar boat with you. And I feel the same way, where I'm not changing my expectations on who I think this team is. From what they've shown me a majority of the season, they have some pretty big inherent flaws and definitely get checked out at certain moments, especially on the defensive end. They have earned that identity so far. They have not earned the shift from me, as they can go out there every single night and defend their asses off and just be with their hair lit on fire and, be cohesive and be together, right? They haven't proven that, but they have shown it. And to me right now in the moment, that's what I'm going to cling on to and say, if you can take this moment and you can extend it, I'll get closer to where I need to be. But even if you make that tweak, even if you trade for Jimmy Butler, you still do not go far in the playoffs if you don't have a quote-unquote identity. And I think that brings it to Mike Budenholzer. And one of the things you were super high on, I was super high on, everybody that was on PHNX Suns was super high on, was what Mike Budenholzer was going to do with this team differently than Frank Vogel, as far as establishing a culture and identity offensively, and also one defensively. You could argue, and in fact, I don't even know if it's an argument, offensively, they certainly have an identity. Top 10 in three-point shooting, right? Like they know what they're doing. I think they can make some tweaks. But defensively, I think we've been waiting. And now you're seeing Bud tap into some bigger wings, Ryan Dunn, Josh Okogie, and kind of being forced to do so without Devin Booker and Grayson Allen. So I think as much as it's on all your stars to continue to, evolve and play good on both ends of the floor, and then your role players to continue to fit in as well, it's on Bud to push the right buttons. And maybe the most underrated storyline of that Christmas win was it felt like Bud continued to push the right buttons, because every time that Denver fought back a little bit, Phoenix had its own counterpunch. And that's not something we've seen a lot this season.
No, and he was willing to adjust and made some smart moves. But I think part of the problem is there's only so many buttons you can push based on the roster you're given, right? And right now, if it's a defensive mindset that you got to get into and that energy, you're relying on Ryan Dunn, who, is a rookie, and you're putting a lot on him. You're relying on Josh Okogie, who we know is inconsistent offensively, and those are, and also Iguodala, who's a rookie as well, to bring the energy. And there's going to be limitations there, which we talked about last night. And I said, quite frankly, I don't care about your offensive limitations with those guys. You need it defensively to spark it. And I hope that Coach Bud continues to make those adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be inherent pressure to figure out how to get Grayson Allen going offensively. When you bring Book back in, how do you adjust that rotation and not lose those minutes for Ryan Dunn and others defensively, Josh Okogie in particular? And it's a tall task. I hope he figures out how to do it and keep things going. It's another I got to see to believe, because I don't think offensively is going to be the problem.
No.
This team has that identity. How do you get the other side?
Yeah, and it's not an enviable position
No.
for Mike Budenholzer at all, but that's why you bring in a championship level coach, and quite frankly, that's why he came here, because this tall responsibility, this tall task for him to tackle, he seems like he was the perfect guy to do it. And you're not going to move on from him. I do believe that he is a better coach than Frank Vogel, even though you're finding yourself in a similar spot. We're going to continue this conversation about Bud. I want to continue to talk about Okogie, Dunn, and Iguodaro, especially their limitations and what the Suns can do to maybe overcome that. But first, I want to remind everybody this edition of Southwest Bias is brought to you by our friends over at Branded Bills. You can elevate your brand with Branded Bills, of course, like we mentioned before. It's the perfect headwear and apparel. Whether you need snapback, truckers, fitted, beanies, or tees, they have you covered with performance and style. I am rocking our custom PHNX Phoenix Branded Bills hat. And if you want your own company, maybe you are starting your own brand, maybe you're an established brand in Phoenix, but you want to just spread your wings a little bit more and get something for your crew. Well, Branded Bills has you covered because they can get you custom headwear and apparel. And you can also check those out maybe over on the ASU side. They have tons of fantastic Sun Devil designs, and they do partner with U of A as well. I don't like the school, but I'd be lying if I didn't say the hats looked pretty good as well. The best part about it all, a local company out of Mesa, Arizona, and you can get 20% off your first order. Head to brandedbills.com, use code PHNX for 20% off your first order just for listening to Southwest Bias. And of course, we've seen the Suns feel like they hit their floor at multiple points this season, and boy, it's ugly. That's how you know it's not an Empire Today floor, because we're on Empire Today flooring right now, and let me tell you, this stuff has held up beautifully. It's been about a year plus now of having Empire Today flooring, about as long as I've been here. And this floor gets beat the heck up. These chairs,
we move stuff constantly. We're not easy on it.
The sexy sax gets real sexy, moving things around.
That just sounds wrong. There's nothing that bizarre going on in this flooring, but
you
it
have
holds
laid
up
on this
regardless.
table, and you stood on this table and moved it around.
Okay.
All I'm saying, Empire Today, fantastic flooring, is because they do it right. They're easy, they're quick, and they're efficient, but there's so much more than that. They're not going to come out here and guarantee you the lowest price, because then they'd be guaranteeing you the lowest quality floor, and that's the best way to have to replace your floor multiple times in the span of a couple years. And let me tell you, that is not a process that you want to go through. Make it easier. Go to Empire today, get your free in-home estimate, and just for listening to Southwest Bias, would you get this? They're not going to get you the lowest price, but they get you $350 off. All listeners of Southwest Bias can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Some restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. There's been conversation on Sun's social media about how missing Grayson Allen and Devin Booker has kind of forced the coaching staff's hand into not playing so many guards at once. And that includes tapping into a Ryan Dunn. Josh Okogie, yeah, he's a little smaller, still slots into that forward role for me as well. And you saw what having somebody with, yes, offensive limitations, but just defensively brings so much more out of this team that it desperately needs, to the point where when Grayson Allen comes back and when Devin Booker comes back, even if the starting lineup continues to be three guards, I need a healthy dose of both of them. Ryan Dunn, Josh Okogie, and also Iguodaro thrown in there as well to help bring that defensive floor up. Because what's the age-old saying in sports, right? Defense wins championships, or defense travels. And for all these fantastic offensive teams that have won championships, you think about the prime Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant, right? Or the Cavs with LeBron, or even the Miami Heat. Yeah, great offenses, always paired with the great, if not top 10, if not top 5 defense. And that floor needs to be raised for Phoenix. And those are three players that, despite their limitations, easily raise that floor from my perspective.
Well, yeah. And I think it's more than just defense. It's energy as well. And youth, it brings exuberance. I think Josh Okogie has always been an energy guy for a team. And, you know, as much as I hate the word vibes matter in a locker room. Two, I think the biggest thing we're learning is you can't sacrifice defense for offense.
Right.
And I think that the way this is structured with Tyus, Book, and Beal, you are sacrificing some defense just naturally by playing essentially 3 guards, one at a position at small forward. So there's always somebody that you can kind of attack from the opponent's side of things, and the Suns' defense suffers for it. This team, again, needs to establish that identity, and part of it is going to be playing scrappy defense and energy if they want to succeed. Because if you put those two things together with that elite offense, now you're cooking with gas, and maybe it's enough to get you where you want to go, to get you in the conversation for Western Conference Finals and a championship, because you're playing heady enough defense where it's not a net negative. And that's all you need, is just not a net negative.
Is this roster flawed? Yes, right.
We knew that.
We've talked about that, but we all like the signings they made in the offseason. And I'm still of the belief that purely from a talent perspective, right? I'm going to say put the flaws aside, and I understand it's a very hard mental exercise to do. But on paper, talent perspective, the Phoenix Suns are talented enough to win an NBA championship. I don't think there's any debate with that, especially with your top-end talent, having a guy like Tyus Jones on the minimum as well, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen in your wing rotation. Like, you have the talent. You have the flaws to stop you from getting there. But at your core, you have that ability. And what I think needs to be adopted, and I'm not saying they haven't done this, but just from my perspective, not being in the locker room, not talking to these guys, is on a game-to-game basis, understanding that your role and your importance might change. Look at Tyus Jones, for example, right? Devin Booker's out. We need you to score more. But there might be a situation where, like the first game against Denver, Tyus Jones is getting attacked. I'm sorry, dude. You're really valuable. You're a great basketball player. But today, we need to play Ryan Dunn instead of you. Today, we need to play Josh Okogie. And not like completely, but just in more spurts. Like the same thing with, hey, Brad, sometimes we're going to need you to play with the stars. Sometimes we're going to need you to play with the bench, right? Sometimes we're going to need you to play the 2, sometimes the 3, sometimes the 1. And I want Bud to tap deeper into that bench consistently, because we did see Ryan Dunn get a little iced out. Josh Okogie does not get consistent minutes unless there's an injury. And I just think that if you're going to Grayson Allen, right, and he brings tremendous value, but there might be a day where, listen, man, we have the shooting covered. We have the offense covered. We need Josh Okogie to go out there and raise hell on the defensive end, because that's what they're attacking. That is the adjustment from Budenholzer that I think would continue to lead to this kind of consistent effort that we're looking to see. It's not going to be perfect, but it wasn't perfect the other way around. That to me is a little bit tantalizing and exciting, because I can see small solutions here. Tweak a little bit of the center rotation. I know the conversation's been about Nurk a lot. I think eventually we're going to have a conversation about Mason Plumlee's offensive input as well. But I see certain solutions there if the mindset is right and the players are bought in. That, Espo, to me, to wrap things up, is leaving me slightly optimistic.
Yeah, I agree that you have to have that team mindset, and you can't be playing for the cliche. You can't be playing for the name on the back of your jersey. You got to be playing for the name on the front of your jersey. But I also think when you make lineup adjustments like they did last night, having Ryan Dunn in there, it makes it a lot easier on a Tyus Jones, because now you have a defensive guy and somebody that can help on that front, and that you can hide Tyus a little bit more, and his impact on offense is just that important. There's all sorts of ways that this could play out, but I think the biggest is you need to have some of those defensive guys on the court at any given point, and I think early on that hasn't always been the case. Sometimes you just go an all offensive lineup, and quite frankly, you've started an all offensive lineup, and it's a lot harder to kind of hide those flaws, and in particular in the third quarter when you come back out with that starting lineup, because I think opponents have a chance to kind of get a feel for you in the first half, and then have punched these guys in the mouth in the third, because they've adjusted, and they said this is where you need to attack because it's working. Those are all things that they're going to have to figure out, and it's part team, it's part coaching, and it's part on that front office to figure out, can we make moves on the margins to help fortify some of these areas, whether it is a defensive wing, whether it's a big who can be part of that pick and roll and play good enough defense that it doesn't hurt them. Those are the the kind of things that they're going to have to figure out. And they're running out of runway, not just because the trade deadline's coming up, but at some point, if you don't rectify those things, what you are now just becomes what you are completely in this season. So they've got a limited amount of time to figure it out.
The only thing that's certain in all of this is that we're just going to have to wait and see a little bit more. Like you mentioned, we're not going to have to wait a long time. The runway is getting shorter.
Mm-hmm.
The walls are closing in. The pressure is building in Phoenix. And we can feel that as fans, as analysts, as journalists. I'm sure the players could feel it as well. And I think that's why it was so important for them to respond on Christmas. So what happens next? We don't know, but we're going to be there along the way right here on PHNX Sports, of course, with PHNX Suns doing pre and post game for every single game. And of course, daily shows mixed in there as well for 5 shows a week. You can go ahead and check all that out right here on our YouTube channel, PHNX Sports. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button as well if you want to know when our Wildcats, Sun Devils show, and so much more all goes live as well. The Cardinals, RIP. But yes, we're still here for you to commiserate and to vent with our Cardinals show as well. If you're listening on audio, we appreciate you rating the show 5 stars and letting us know what you like and maybe letting us know what you would prefer to see as far as content goes going forward. We appreciate all of you and, of course, listening on Southwest Bias. We'll be back next week with more, hopefully slightly optimistic Southwest Biases.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.